Welcome to 5 Points Blues presentation of Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but were too afraid to ask. Here are your hosts, Nikki Harrison and Christy Scales.
Hello. Thank you for joining us on this holiday edition of Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but were too afraid to ask. I'm Nikki Harrison here with Christy Scales. And joining us, we have with us Executive Vice President Charlotte Jones Anderson. Thank you.
Hello, hello.
And we have the voice of the Dallas Cowboys, Brad Sham.
Ho, ho, ho. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Now, this is a huge week
Yes,
because
it
it's
is.
the 22nd
It's a
year.
tiny week.
A tiny
It's
week.
a little tiny week.
Not just the Cowboys playing for first place against the Redskins on Thursday in our annual Thanksgiving Day game, but the 22nd time that the Cowboys have partnered with the Salvation Army for the Red Kettle Kickoff campaign. And Charlotte, you were just saying that rehearsals are already underway, and Megan, our artist this year, is already in town. So tell us about Thursday. What to expect.
Can we stop just a second because your intro of we are approaching Thanksgiving
No, it's here.
Against whom? The Redskins for what?
Hello.
First place.
First place. Can we just stop for a moment?
Wait,
and go,
do you mean the game's important? I mean, the game is a factor?
Oh my goodness! Well,
Wow.
I, like probably most of us, I wasn't sure that was actually going to be the scenario a few weeks ago. And,
sure.
You know, you just
let it
never know.
play out.
Hang on for
Gotta
the ride
let it
and
play out.
watch.
What
But-
a nail biter yesterday.
Yes, you know, and it's amazing that obviously we are all, you know, so excited about the game, but what an impact it actually has on this week. And you know, I don't know if many of y'all have taken a close look at what Dak wrote on his wrist, which you know, on his wristband, and it says it's about the why. Why? Why do we do what we do? Why? What gives us meaning in our life about what is actually important? And for us, this week is very much about the why of the Dallas Cowboys. And I think when you think about what we do every day, which is we play football every day, and our goal every day is to try to go out there to compete and to win and to hopefully be in the last game of the year. But it's actually bigger than that. That our purpose is so much bigger than that. It's about how can we use the game that we play to make an impact on the community at large. And that's what Thanksgiving Day halftime with the Salvation Army is all about. And for us, you know, that began back in the 90s, you know, 22 years ago.
Wow.
It's been a long-standing relationship with the Salvation Army. And we were having an incredible experience with the Cowboys. We had just won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, so that was certainly a heyday for us. And then one of our players made an unfortunate decision off the field, and the whole perspective of who the Dallas Cowboys were changed overnight, just like that. And at that point, we realized that if people were going to be as interested in what we do off the field as they are as interested in what we do on the field, then we needed to find a way to have a partner where we can make a significant impact on the community that we play in and those who give their time and attention to who we are. At that moment, it was a challenge to be the Jerry Lewis, you know, of something, but it was of who? What organization could you partner with that had a brand and recognition as big as your own, that had scale, that was national, if not international in size, but most importantly, one that was built on integrity, that you could trust, that you could partner with, that was really making meaningful impact, and that you knew if you brought them a spotlight, they'd still be making meaningful impact that everybody respected. And so there began our relationship with the Salvation Army when we realized that we could take Thanksgiving Day, the same time that all those red kettles go out across the country, create a national launch around that effort, bring visibility and attention to what the Salvation Army does, and thereby hopefully inspire people across the country who are eating their turkey to give to the Salvation Army and make a difference.
Whose idea was that originally to involve the Salvation Army?
Look at you, Brad Sham.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take it a step further because Jimmy Johnson once called me a historian, and it was not meant to be a compliment. But I do take pride in some of the things that I've had the opportunity to be exposed to. And to me, and I've said this. I'm not saying this because you're here, because I've said it 100 times publicly. What your family has done with and I'm giving the rest of them credit for what you did, what your family's done with the Salvation Army is a natural extension of what Tex Schramm did to get the Thanksgiving Day game in the first place, the league thought it would be a gimmick. It would be great for what you just said. People are eating turkey. Let's have a football game. And Tex said, nobody wanted it. He said, I'll take it, but you have to give it to me every year, because he wanted it to become a family thing for Cowboy fans to be able to build into the fabric of their holiday. And that was innovative. And I can only imagine that wherever he was, in Dallas or in London or wherever he was, when you made that deal with the Salvation Army, there was a big piece of him that was really proud and jealous that he hadn't thought of that first, because it's such a natural extension for all the reasons that you've outlined, and it's become synonymous. There's a generation or 2 generations of people,
absolutely,
fans who don't know that the Cowboys have not always been involved with the Salvation Army on Thanksgiving.
Right, right. Isn't that crazy? You know, and in saying that, just to piggyback on it, that was actually the intent. If you could create something that could become a tradition, you know, Thanksgiving Day clearly was our Cowboys tradition, and how do you add to that that could also become a tradition?
Absolutely.
And at the time, you know, the Super Bowl was really the only halftime that was celebrated, televised, and acknowledged as integral part of the game. So, you know, creating traditions are a tough thing to do, you know.
It usually takes a long time.
Yeah, and especially in the limited time that you have for a halftime for an NFL game. I mean, the clock is 13 minutes. It's 12 minutes after the players clear the field. So, I mean, this is no small undertaking. How did you even secure the time to put on a Super Bowl quality halftime show?
Didn't they give you more time?
They actually did. So when I recognized that we really had an opportunity to do something here, if we could find an entertainer that would come and, you know, be our Super Bowl talent, if you will, to help us launch this, that we did. We needed exactly that, more time. And so I asked my dad, I said, could you get me a meeting with the president of NBC Sports? And, you know, my dad likes, oh yeah, you know, I'm glad you think big.
This is like my very famous, my very favorite Charlotte Jones Anderson story.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, can you get me that meeting? And of course he laughed and said, yes, I'll get you that meeting. And off we went together to New York to go meet with Dick Ebersol, NBC at the time. And, you know, I remember the night before I was preparing for this meeting, you know, that was a really big deal. I had my little boom box. Brad, you can appreciate this.
Yes,
I'm a historian too, by the way.
Yeah.
And on my little boom box was Reba McEntire and the music that she had specifically recorded for this, and my papers all around my floor of knowledge, which is, you know, where I study and prepare. And my dad walks in and is like, what in the world are you doing?
Thought you had a meeting tomorrow.
I'm getting ready for this meeting. And, you know, he takes one look at my disaster and is like, that's great. I'll handle the meeting for you tomorrow. And let's just get some sleep. So the next morning, you know, we take off. We end up on the top floor of, you know, Rockefeller Center, you know, right at the top of the rock, and walk into the president of NBC Sports.
Wow.
And, you know, the door opens, and obviously I know that he's taken the meeting because Jerry Jones is called. I'm not that naive. But, you know, we walk in and, you know, we say a few pleasantries, and then, you know, he looks straight at us and is like, why are you here? And my dad takes one look at him and one look at me, and he's like, Charlotte has something she wants to ask you. Which is,
your
you know,
mother wants to speak to you.
Yes, exactly. And then off I went. You know, everything that is great about Thanksgiving. You know, all of, you know, it's a time for us all that we really sit there, really in our living rooms with a different perspective about what life's about helping other people, about being fired up about our game, and how can we bring all of that together. And so, you know, I give him this spiel, and he says, well, you know what? No one's ever walked into my office and asked me for airtime for free before. And, you know, no one had. I didn't really think about that at the time. I just wanted that show on TV.
Yeah, you were so naive. You didn't know what you didn't know.
And I didn't know.
Sense.
Naivety is a great thing most often. And, you know, he looks at me and he says, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll air your halftime if you go get an extension from the NFL, which had never been done before. And as you know, we keep trying to shorten our game, not lengthen them. So that actually was a really big deal. And you produce a show worthy of network television, and we'll air it. If it's no good, we'll cut to commercial.
Just like that.
Just like that.
No pressure.
No pressure. Off we go. And we walked out of the office, and the door shut, and my dad's like, do you know what you just did? And I sat there and I thought, got my first national televised halftime show. Woo! Yes, I do. And he grabbed me and he said, no, you just got over $12 million worth of exposure for the Salvation Army. And then he looked at me and he said, do you know what you're doing? And I was like, nope, but I will by Thanksgiving, I promise. And, now here we sit 22 years later.
Wow.
Which is so exciting. Megan Trainor is in the house, by the way, literally
awesome.
in the house. She came in Sunday night, last night, landing about the same time we did on our way home from Atlanta. She is rehearsing with our cheerleaders just right next door. And she is so excited about this. She has an incredible show planned for us, completely recut tracks and everything just for this show, which is actually unusual if you think about that. I mean, she's doing this for the good of the cause for the Salvation Army. She gets paid nothing for this, but coming in to show off and hopefully raise a lot of attention and eyeballs to what the Salvation Army is actually doing.
But how did you? She's the latest in this long line. It's a who's who of entertainers with Creed and Daughtry and Destiny's Child
Kelly
and
Clarkson, I remember
Keith
when you had
Urban,
Kelly.
Carrie Underwood. But you
Lots.
mentioned Reba McEntire being the first one, and you went into Dick Ebersol's office with a song that she had specially done.
Yeah.
How did you get Reba McEntire on board with the Salvation Army? What was your sales pitch to her?
We had met Reba through the course of our Super Bowl wins, and she had been a part of one of our victories, which was amazing. And so we'd gotten acquainted at that time, and I flew to Nashville, and I sat down with her and asked her about this. And to sit down in front of somebody and say, can you cut a song? Can you come perform live and do this all for free is a whole nother, conversation. But she looked at me, and when I told her about the Salvation Army, she said, my grandfather was served by the Salvation Army on the front lines of the war. They used to serve donuts to those who actually, literally, they would come off the front line, and the first people they would see were the Salvation Army. And so they were caring for our soldiers. And that struck a chord with her from her family. And she said, it's my favorite organization. And so from there, it was all heart, right? Just all heart. She gave everything that she had and jumped right in. And, now it's history. Now she was, our first kickoff. And, you love people like that actually understand the more powerful meaning and the purpose of what you're doing. And they certainly understand the visibility that comes on Thanksgiving. Let's make no, bones about that. This is a huge audience for us on Thanksgiving Day. And now when you roll into Thursday with what's at stake on the line right now, playing the Redskins, there are going to be a lot of people with their turkey leg watching this game, I promise.
Do you have artists now filtering word to you that they wouldn't mind an invitation to perform on Thanksgiving?
As a matter of fact, we do, which is, you always dream that it would come to that at some point in time, but we do. And making those selections are always interesting. You want to certainly not make your decisions too soon because you want to take people that are really relevant at the time. And she's incredibly relevant. She's got another song that is out just this week with a huge promotion that is really great. It's like, hey, DJ, it's like really, really fun and poppy on the radio, but you also, want to make sure that the demographic that you're reaching. And, right now, as I think we've all said, especially in this room, Brad, here you go. Yeah. It's the year of the woman, in case you weren't noticing.
Oh.
And you talk about a really strong
I'd like to be on record as saying I think women should be in charge of everything, everywhere.
Love it. Thank you, Brad.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
There you go. That's exactly right. I haven't lived all this time by accident. Thank you very much.
No, but it's great. I mean, through the course of the 22 years, when you talk about the different demographics, you've had country, Pitbull, Enrique Iglesias, the younger crowd when it was Jessica Simpson and Billy Gilman and Jonas Brothers and the like, Keith Urban.
Yeah.
I remember when Nicole Kidman was on the sideline
That's right.
that
I
day.
did too.
Yeah,
When
Sheryl
Keith Urban
Crow
was there. That one of my
Yes.
favorites, actually,
Yes.
of all of the performances. So, boy, that isn't that great? It's like, who do I want to do it this year? That's where we envy you.
How far in advance of Thanksgiving do you start getting requests that you have to winnow through?
We usually start in the summer is kind of the time frame because you always know then of who's releasing songs and kind of what's coming up and what's relevant. So that's when you start to kind of hone in on specific conversations. And it's interesting now that the NFL, as they they book the Super Bowl, you know, they have this window and this list of artists. Obviously, the Super Bowl is the huge get in the NFL these days and has been forever. So there's a lot of artists that would love to participate in the Super Bowl. Well, the league has started to hold this variety of artists and not allow us to go after them until they've made their decision, which is crazy. So we kind of go a little tete-a-tete with them often.
I bet.
On what is, you know, what they're doing, what decisions that they make. So now we've actually had to wait until they make their decision and notify their other artists before we can do our part. So,
they don't want you stealing their thunder.
You know, exactly. Everything comes with a little politics.
Wow.
So,
Sure.
Wow.
But
even that.
In terms of what this has meant for the Salvation Army over these 2 decades plus, I mean, it's in the billions of dollars,
Billions.
right? But,
Yes,
but I think
unbelievable.
the point of it is, you know, every time that we walk out of a store and put money in the kettle, I remember 2 seasons ago when a certain running back did a certain stunt that led to a lot of $21 donations for his number, Ezekiel Elliott. Could you talk about what that specific moment when Zeke Elliott jumped into the red kettle, what it did for the campaign and the exposure internationally?
You know, okay, so that's what you dream of, especially as a marketer. You definitely dream of something like that. But as being a part of this organization, that meant so much more to me than the marketing effort that was created because of it, because it genuinely means you've created an ethos within your organization, that a culture of recognizing the significance of the Salvation Army and what they do, that, you know, that's what we hope for our young guys that come to the Cowboys to understand the responsibility that comes with wearing the star. And when you have given them that message kind of over and over and over again, and then on their own, they decide to go run and jump in a kettle, somewhere it has clicked. You know, somewhere it has registered to them that if I do this, this really could be something special. And, you know, a lot of people actually asked me if we had planned that. And I was just like everybody else, I'm like, oh my God, he just jumped in the kettle. But more importantly, I was thinking, that kettle used to be loaded with pyro. He just jumped in the kettle.
Does the Salvation Army have any way of tracking how much extra money they got from him doing that?
Yes, actually, within a matter of, I think it was 36 hours after he jumped in, they had raised over $450,000 just off of that effort, because this was after Thanksgiving, if y'all recall. And it was in $21 increments, which is why they could track it.
Oh, my goodness.
And so people were giving $21 and, you know, just $2,100. And Zeke, I don't know if you remember, Zeke gave $21,000.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it was the snowball effect that had this just crazy impact on everybody. Plus, it just made it exciting and fun and everything. So it was a great day for the Salvation Army and a great day for the Dallas
and
Cowboys.
That's awesome.
that's when the NFL was really cracking down on the touchdown celebrations.
Because he was also
and they were
fined.
thinking, well, that was the hope. Actually, actually, the organization was hoping that Zeke would get fined.
That's exactly right. I think Jerry was asked that right after the game, because it certainly was. We were certainly in the no fun league zone then. And after several media had asked him, is he going to get fined? Is he going to get fined? And he said, he goes, boy, I hope so, because we need to continue this conversation and debate over whether or not he should have done it and whether the league should fine him or not. They ended up not fining him, which then actually some of the other players across the league criticized that. Of course, he's the only one that could get away with something like that. But the story itself certainly had legs of its own. But we were kind of hoping for the fine.
Sure.
I want to know, did the three of you, did you and your siblings inherit your father's innate sense of marketing, or was it something you learned from him?
Must have been in the water.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
We want, one reason why we have Brad Sham here is not just because of your support of the Salvation Army through the years, but 40 years in the Dallas Cowboys radio booth, which is now named after Brad Sham, there at AT&T Stadium. But the that's right. But so many of the Thanksgiving Day games that you have called over the years, Do you have a particular favorite game or moment that sticks out for you?
You know, there have been 39 of them so far, so they some of them run together.
Yes.
But they don't always have to do with something as having as much magnitude as this year's game will. Sometimes the team's bad or the other team is bad, and it's a memorable day. The day always feels, as you well know, Christy, from being involved in it for so long, the day just feels different. It doesn't feel like any other game. It's like a bowl game a little bit. So that's first. It's even before everybody was playing a game on Thursday night at one time or another, it's separate. And so, you know, the what has become known as the Leon Lett game, the slush game at Texas Stadium in '93. Tony Romo threw 5 touchdown passes against Tampa Bay in one of his very first years as a starter on Thanksgiving. I remember one day it was sometime in the 80s, things weren't going real well, and they played the Vikings, and the Vikings killed them, and Darren Nelson was a little running back from Stanford, as a matter of fact, who had a terrific career, and he had about 80 touchdowns and 9,000 yards total offense that day. They could not do anything with him. So there are just some of those moments and I remember a game against Washington, and it had to have been Emmett's rookie year. You can look in the book and see if I'm getting the year right. That it was 1990, because I remember really not knowing Emmett as a player fully yet. And Emmett goes on a breakaway, and Darrell Green's chasing him, one of the fastest players in the league. And I'm calling the play, and Emmett is getting away, and he's at the 30, but he'll never outrun Darrell Green, and he outran Darrell Green. and it was
1990, and the Cowboys won 27-17.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
So
all right.
Yeah, there are things things like that kind of jump out at you, and it's a little bit like, if you're a baseball fan, you know that sometimes in the World Series, the standout difference-making performer is not the guy who was the biggest star all year long. It's just someone who was there for the moment. That happens on Thanksgiving sometimes. It happens that everybody would expect or hope that if it's not Zeke or Dak Prescott or Tank Lawrence or Amari Cooper, that everyone would expect those would be the guys who would make and maybe Jeff Swaim's going to catch 3 touchdown passes on Thanksgiving Day, and that kind of thing can happen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It might be a redheaded backup quarterback that is not one of the triplets. Is that one of your favorites? Is the Jason Garrett win over the Packers on Thanksgiving
Day?
Day?
I was certainly going to make reference to that since it's so poignant and apropos for this Thanksgiving. But it's interesting, all of those great moments that I think are truly significant, it's what makes Thanksgiving so special. Some of my most poignant moments have actually nothing to do with what happened on the field. There was one in particular. You know, we get the call, and we have had this ice storm, this incredible ice storm, snowstorm. I can't remember exactly the year that was, because you never know here. It can be freezing, below freezing on Thanksgiving, or it can be 85 degrees. And all of the pipes were frozen at Texas Stadium. And they called and said, we can't use the restrooms. And I thought, oh my God.
Wait a minute, you have 65,000 people
are showing up for turkey. We better be able to use the restrooms.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
So I get a little different wave of information that comes my way on Thanksgiving.
Are we selling coffee? The restrooms have to work.
Well, time flew by.
It sure did.
Our time is up. We thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, gosh.
On our holiday edition.
So fun.
Thank you. Well, we will be back here tomorrow, and our guest tomorrow is a familiar face, Taylor Stern, and country music star Alex Stern. So same time, same place, right here on 5 Points Blue.
This has been a production of 5 Points Blue, DallasCowboys.com, and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.